bodybuilding ultimately isn't the most healthiest sport. So you got to figure out for yourself, what do you want to do with your body to get to the goals you want? It's putting a necessary strain in your body where your heart's not strong enough and big enough to pump that much blood around without extreme difficulty. So I think part of the unhealthy aspect of bodybuilding is the point that we ultimately want to have the best performance, the best physique that we can. So by doing that, people are often willing to take unnecessary risks. So they're going to by default put more strain on their body to achieve the goals that they want. So that might be excessive performance enhancing drug use. You know, I say excessive just because I've used them in the past.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We've got Jonathan Griffiths with us today. I don't know, you might have to unmute. No, you're unmuted. Jonathan, how are you doing today? Good morning, or evening, I should say.
Yeah, good evening. Not bad. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So you're in the UK, apparently, I'm guessing. Is that correct?
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
How are things there today?
Yeah, not bad, thanks, actually. Quite a cold day today. Sun's come out a little bit, but it's pretty chill.
Yeah, I was there in August. It was still pretty pleasant. It was nice. And my first real trip to the UK. I'd flown through several times, but never got to spend any time. So it was quite pretty there in London when I was there a few weeks ago. So you are, my understanding is you're a bodybuilder, correct?
That's right, yeah.
How long have you been doing that?
So I've been bodybuilding since the age of around 14.
And how old are you now?
Competing around the age of 16. I'm currently 27 years old.
27. Yeah, I started lifting weight. I never was a bodybuilder. I just never had the desire or really the proportion to want to do that. But I've been training since I've been about 14 as well, and I'm 50, soon to be 56. So I got about 42 years of this stuff going. So I'm definitely a fan of lifting and training and resistance stuff, and I think it's great for us. So, I guess my understanding is you do a carnivorous approach. Is that fair to say, or something along those lines?
That's right. Yeah. So, I've had maybe one deviation a month for the last 4 or 5 months. I've competed using a carnivore diet before. I've got into good shape. You know, I've got into like ripped condition using it, just like you have, sort of thing. Yeah.
I think it's not that hard to get lean. Some of the people would say is you can't put on muscle, and that would be the big concern. Have you found that to be true or not true?
Yeah, so I've managed to gain around 9 to 10 kilograms of muscle in about a year and a half, and that's in my advanced training years. During that time, I've been doing predominantly a animal-based, meat, fat, eggs, dairy, cheese kind of diet. So yeah, it's made a big difference, actually. It's actually improved. I think not by the fact of just the carnivore diet itself, but the omittance of other things, how that impacts your digestion. That seems to be quite a key thing for me.
Yeah, and you made the point in your advanced training year, so there's a difference between someone who's just starting. They're going to make pretty significant gains. And once you've got 5 years under your belt, or 10 years, or like I have 40 years, it's a hell of a lot harder to put on muscle. I can tell you, as you reach your sort of genetic maximum, it's difficult outside of, using drugs, which I personally have no desire to do, but I know it's part of the bodybuilding culture in many regards, although there are, natural contests that some people will do, which I think is great.
Can I just say something briefly on that?
Of course.
So Dr. Baker, a lot of people are saying that, he uses steroids, performance enhancing drugs. I can say honestly that he's probably the peak of what would be considered natural. So everyone out there saying, he takes testosterone and this, I don't believe it. I think he is drug free. So.
Well, he is me, and I know I'm not. Exactly for that. But like I said, because there's a lot of people that aren't used to being around athletes. I've been around strength athletes my whole life, and there are some really, really impressive people that I believe are truly natural. And then there's a point where, you get to this Mr. Olympia and many of the bodybuilders, and there's a difference there. And as hard as I train, I'll never reach that level, without the drugs, but. You can get pretty strong. I mean, I've seen guys that, deadlift 800 plus pounds, which I'm very, very sure, 380 kilos or 370 kilos, which I clearly believe are drug free. So you can attain a very high level of strength and muscle size without the drugs if you're willing to put in the work. It's just that, many people, they don't want to spend, decades and decades of training to do it. And there's a lot of people doing it a lot quicker and easier with the drugs. So. Well, thanks for the acknowledgement. I mean, because when people accuse me of drugs, I just kind of laugh. I think, well, that's a compliment, but it's still funny at the same time.
Take it as a good thing.
Do you, so, I mean, obviously you mentioned getting ripped, which is not that hard to do. But as far as what do you mentioned, meat, eggs, dairy, which dairy, a lot of people will talk about, well, dairy has some carbohydrates in it and therefore it's quote unquote cheating. Although, I don't necessarily think carbohydrates per se are evil or bad for everybody. And certainly, I think there's, what does the food contain? What's in it besides the carbohydrate? What is a sort of a day of eating look like for you? Like when you're just maintaining, I assume you're not in right now, right? Are you in contest prep right now? Or are you just kind of in the maintenance mode?
No, I'm more in a maintenance kind of health phase at the moment. So I'm not trying to really push my body in terms of fat loss or muscle gain.
Yeah.
But what a day of eating looks like for me, I predominantly have eggs in the morning. I might have some Parmesan cheese with that. Sometimes a little bit of meat. My next meal is usually after the gym. So a bit like you, I don't like to eat a lot before training. I find it just slows me down. I think Dr. Chaffee's the the same. The second meal is like a protein shake sort of thing. So just be a whey protein shake. Might put eggs in it, maybe some like heavy cream, something like that. Third meal, usually like a meat with some eggs. I tend to do that quite often. Fourth meal, same, usually meat and eggs. And the last meal is usually, I'll say fish and eggs is pretty much it. I eat a lot of eggs. I seem to find it helps me a lot with my cognition, where my body sort of processes things and works.
Yeah, and eggs are a wonderful source of nutrition. I know there's some people that are down on eggs, and some people particularly egg whites. Are you eating the whole egg, or are you just focusing on the yolk only?
I eat the whole egg. If it's just the yolk I'm having, you just have that raw in a shake or something. There's not really an issue with that, in my opinion. But I usually just have the whole egg, just for simplicity.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. I mean, egg white's a good source of protein. There's no doubt about it. It's a very high quality protein, very nice amino acid profile. I mean, I think maybe drinking pure raw egg whites might get people into some trouble, but I think cooked egg whites are not an issue. I know that one thing I noticed you just mentioned, you're putting down 6 meals a day. That 5 meals a day. Sorry. That's a lot of eating, and that's on par with a lot of bodybuilders. They're often eating every couple of hours. Is that to support muscle protein synthesis, or is that just your preferred how you like to eat?
So I've got to that conclusion based on a number of different things. So my diet is very specific to me in that Dr. Baker or Brett Lloyd or anyone else would actually do something different to me. I seem to benefit from splitting up my meals more, as in my digestion feels a bit smoother. It allows me to sort of have a period before bedtime so I can't feel bogged down by eating too much. I find when I have big meals, at least, it just seems to slow me down. That's just my personal experience, but I know for a fact that most people will fall into a maybe 1, 2, or 3 meal per day kind of eating regime.
Yeah, I mean, there's, when you look at some of the research on muscle protein synthesis, and guys like Don Layman and others, and I've interviewed Don and Stu Phillips, and there does seem to be a benefit for sort of stimulating muscle protein synthesis through mTOR stimulation a few times throughout the day, which is maybe slightly better than like right now. I'm leaning out. I'm eating 1 meal a day, and that's fine. And I like the convenience of not having to cook 5 times a day, because, if you're cooking, unless you're just drinking them in a shake, which is fair enough. And sometimes I'll do that, that there is a slight benefit. And I think I don't think it's a huge benefit, but I think there's a slight benefit. And maybe if your goal is maximum muscle gain and bodybuilding, then there is an advantage. I see a lot of people that they struggle to gain weight on a carnivore diet because it's so filling. And I often tell them, hey, break it up into smaller meals and you might be able to eat a total more amount of calories that way. Do you know what your caloric? I mean, I'm sure you know what you're taking in calories. As a bodybuilder, you have to track. I mean, I think at least some point, how many calories you're getting, how much protein you're getting. So what does that look like for you?
I don't tend to look too much at calories, but if you were to put a label on it, it would be something like, at the moment it's about 3,600, maybe 3,800. That's probably actually allowing me to, cut fat to some extent at the moment, or at least maintain. That looks like, in terms of protein fat grams, it might be, I'd say, about 250 protein, 280 fat, something like that, and the rest would be carbs. So it might be some days it'd be like 5 grams of carbs. I might just have some carbs from eggs. Yeah. Other days it might be up to 25, 30 if I have like cream and whey protein, things of that nature.
Yeah, that's very similar to what I'm doing right now. And I'm actually cutting. I'm probably taking in around 3,000 calories and maybe 3,200, and it's 210, 220 of protein and maybe 240 of fat, something like that. And I'm definitely, I know, in a caloric deficit right now because I'm getting leaner and leaner as I do this. And what is your, how big are you? What do you weigh? Stones, pounds? I don't know, whatever your preferred unit, I can convert.
So I'm something like 245 pounds at the moment. It's about 111 kilograms.
112 kilos, I think. That's
11, maybe 12. Yeah, it's been a long time since I looked at that number,
it's 2.2.
I'm 6'1" as well for reference point.
You're 6'1"?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm the exact same weight as you right now. I'm 245 on the scale this morning, but I'm 6'5", so I'm a little taller and lankier. And to be a bodybuilder, I'd have to weigh, 300 pounds, which I don't want to do.
300 plus,
I don't want to do that. So that's interesting. So as far as, so what did you do before this? I mean, you've been training since you're 14, so you're 27 to 13 years. How is this different from what you did, say, 5 years ago?
So, Shawn, I've done a number of different diets. I may be 27 years old, but I've been through the mill just like a lot of the people that probably watch this have been as well. I've done high carb diets, low fat diets, ketogenic diets. I found a lot of things didn't really work. So I'd do something for a few months. My digestion would suffer. I start to feel worse, a brain fog. I suffer with autistic spectrum disorder as well. And that seems to be somewhat alleviated by following this way of eating. Just omitting the plants and the sort of toxic foods that might be leaching nutrients from my body that I might need more of.
That's interesting, and I've got an autistic son, and I know you interview with Bart Kay, who I think he also says he's on the autistic spectrum, or maybe Asperger's or something. And I mean, just talking with you right now, I'll laugh. I'm wearing a CGM and I keep getting these low glucose readings. Obviously, my brain isn't working.
You're gonna die. You're gonna die.
Right? No, but it's my blood glucose is running in the low 60s, upper 50s right now, which is not fine for me. There is that's because interviewing you, I had no idea. I didn't know anything about your background. You look like you're very able to converse very nicely. So, and I don't know what you were like on a different diet, but clearly, I would not have guessed if you told me you've been on autistic spectrum. So that sounds like it's helping at least to some degree. When you were on these other diets, how did that affect you physically, mentally? You said maybe gut issues. I don't know if it affected your autism. How did that work?
Yes, I'd get these. Looking back, it is hard to sort of identify and explain it to people, but I had these immense feeling, sort of dread, impending doom. And that's why I can relate a lot with Brett. It's that my depression was so bad that I felt like everything was going to go wrong. And I was always in that state, that anxious state where your body thinks, your body's reacting to what your mind's telling it and vice versa. So I was in that. His symptomology was horrendous. I really attribute that to the gut health aspect of it all. I think, just like I said earlier, just omitting the plants seemed to be a huge benefit, reducing the sugar, the systemic inflammation. I've had these numbers tested and I seem to be in a lot better stead nowadays than I was in a previous diet.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And so growing up as a kid, what were you eating? What would mom and dad feed you at that time?
Okay, good question. Yeah, so as an autistic individual, I really struggled to eat a lot of foods. My variety was very limited. So basically, I'd eat very bland foods. It would be beige foods. So it'd be ice cream, white bread, cheese, Philadelphia spread, things like chicken nuggets, chips, things of that nature. I never really ate red meat. It wasn't really something I just wanted to eat. I don't know how that came across, but part of the bodybuilding and how that's helped me as well is that's given me more discipline. And obviously, as a bodybuilder, you need to eat a lot of food. So I had to, by nature, diversify my food options. So that bodybuilding is actually what led me to a carnivore diet.
Hey folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. If you guys are enjoying these success stories, well, you can become your own success story. You can do that by heading over to CarnivoreDiet. You can sign up for a free 30-day trial and get started today. We're looking forward to supporting you. Our community is wonderful, and we'd love to see your success. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful, thing bodybuilding can be so incredibly, beneficial for so many people. And I think that's great that it's benefiting you both physically and mentally. As far as your, let's talk a little bit about training, I guess. So as far as bodybuilding, I was reading through your profile a little bit, and I saw some talks about volume, intensity, things like that. What seems to make sense, or what works for you, or do you? I don't know if you can extrapolate to everybody, but as far as what is your approach to bodybuilding?
So my approach is essentially to progress weights using methods which allow you to reach technical failure. So that means I'm using strict technique, but still getting to the muscular failure aspect of the lift. Where training volume might lie is dependent on my recovery at the time. So the idea that someone should be able to train using one methodology for their entire training history would not make sense to me, because ultimately your bodies and mind are dynamic. We're not always in the same set points. Our environments are different. So I find there is almost a balance between volume and intensity. I tend to favor intensity. In terms of training, I train about 5 times a week for just over an hour. I'd say I'm doing somewhere between 15 and 20 sets. I'd say 90% of my sets are to technical muscular failure. And that seems to be what's working out for me at the moment. So
when you say 15 to 20 sets, is that per muscle group, or is that through an overall workout?
So that would be per workout. So for example, if I was doing a chest, shoulder, tricep workout on Monday, that might be maybe 8 sets for chest, a few more for shoulders, then the remainder being triceps.
Got it. So, and if, some of the recent recommendations have come out from guys like Brad Schoenfeld and others, suggest that somewhere around minimum 10 sets per week per body part to, like you described, close to muscular failure, if not at failure, close to it, seems to be the most beneficial from an intensity standpoint. And is that, are you doing a lot of compound movements, deadlifts, squats, bench press, or are you doing more of isolation type things or a combination of both?
I'd say I'm using actually mostly machines and cables.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a degenerative spine disease, which means I cannot lift the weights that I used to. For a point of reference, I used to squat 245 kilograms for around 8 repetitions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
I used to deadlift 250 kilos. That's 500 and something pounds for maybe 2 repetitions. I can't do any more. So I do have to rely on getting my intensity and effort put out through machine-based exercises.
Now, you said you have a degenerative condition in your spine, maybe degenerative disc disease, I'm guessing. But was that due to an injury, or is that just something that came up?
So that was an injury when I was playing rugby at about the age of 14. We were playing up against adults, basically, in sixth form. So I'm guessing it's like college for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
We're playing in an international sports tour, and I got badly tackled outside of the field of play. That's basically what happened. So I never got it diagnosed, but using the carnivore diet actually helped me diagnose my issue. So I didn't realize I had such a problem I did until I, removed all the inflammatory foods. I thought, right, so I've done all that. I feel a bit better, but my spine's still not fixed. Something is wrong here. So I went back to the doctor time and time again, like I have for the last 14 years, and said, you got to get me MRI sorted out. What's my issue? Then I found that out. So that's where I am now.
So they finally did an MRI and they found some level of degeneration in one of the spinal segments, I'm assuming.
Yes, I've got something called spondylitic spondylolisthesis,
mm-hmm.
bilateral pars defect, and foraminal narrowing of the L5 and S1 level.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's, for those who don't know, that basically what happens is your spine kind of shifts forward, between usually it's L4, L5 or L5, S1, and the spine, the vertebral bodies, one slides a little forward, and there's different gradations, depending on how far it is. And for some people, they would say, lifting heavy weights may exacerbate that type of thing. So you have to train around that injury. And, my personal take on that is, even though you have that injury, you should still strengthen the muscles around that, because it's going to provide additional stability that the bone itself, may not be doing. So have you noticed that going on a carnivore, I mean, were you in a lot of pain? I guess it sounds like you were going to the doctor every year. You were in pretty frequent pain.
Yeah. So, I'm in tremendous pain most of the time. There's very little times where I've not been in pain. If I was to put it on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably say 7 throughout the whole day. In extreme cases, might be 9. That is usually a result of injury. And it's frustrating because I'm sure, as you know, you've got experience in this sort of field. I've had to use so many medications. I'm now, with the help of the carnivore diet, I'm actually using less medications to alleviate my pain. So I'm just using pregabalin at, a low moderate dose. I'm not needing opioids anymore, paracetamol, ibuprofen. They don't touch the pain anyway, so I might as well not use them. So,
well, I'm glad to hear that you've been able to come off the medications and the diet is helping to some degree. And then I think continued with a healthy lifestyle is probably some of the best things you can do, at this point. Obviously without diagnosing you and examining you, it's hard to make any more definitive claims than that. I assume that they did not recommend you do a surgery or anything like that, or did they talk about that?
Yeah, so I'm awaiting a spinal fusion surgery within about 3 months. It seems now like it's at the point where it's getting worse more as time goes on. So what was before maybe 5 out of 10 pain is now a steady 7.
Mm-hmm.
I can see, when you can tell in yourself, like, it's getting worse, and your flare-ups are getting worse as time goes on. So I'm at the point now I'm going to have surgery, unfortunately.
Ouch. Well, good luck with that. Where in the UK are you located, by the way? Just out of curiosity.
I'm in Bournemouth, which is in the southwest.
Southwest. Okay. So I know when I drove to, how far is that from Stonehenge? Because I know Stonehenge looks like, I think it was southwest.
Yeah.
Sort of location.
My brother lives near there in Amesbury. It's an hour north of me.
Okay. So
just south.
I'm sure you visited there before.
Yeah.
So, as far as, you're eating 5 meals a day, you're eating a lot of eggs seem to work better for you. Do you find that, that you have to, do you have any problems eating that much protein? There's some people that suggest, that we need to minimize, I wouldn't say minimize a protein, but excessive protein beyond, 1.5 grams per kilogram, which you would exceed and which I would exceed, is not beneficial and may be harmful. Do you notice any benefit from higher fat, lower fat? Any differences there?
Yeah, so I talk extensively about this on my YouTube channel. But to summarize it, what I'm noticing is I have to hit a certain threshold of protein. Anything less than that, and my training performance, how I feel, seems to diminish. Because of protein fat ratio, I might say somewhere between 60 and 70% fat, the remainder being protein and trace carbs. So that seems to work out pretty well for me. I'm actually someone that's exceeded. I'm probably one of the few people on the internet that's had as much protein as I had over a long period of time. So I averaged 500 grams of protein for about 9 months straight. And that was, calculated properly. I weighed all my food. I'm very meticulous, sort of thing. And yeah, no ill effects. My digestion was a little bit slower, admittedly, because, protein takes a long time to get through your body, but it wasn't necessarily worse. It just took longer to, get through.
Yeah. I mean, there's, if you look at the work of guys like Jose Antonio, who I've interviewed before, he's out in St. Petersburg or something. And he's done research on bodybuilders looking at those amounts of protein, 500, 600 grams a day, with no ill effect noted on kidney, liver health, or anything. And interestingly, one of the things that he pointed out was that, they would eat all this extra calories and protein. They would not gain any body fat. And it was like, where the hell did the protein go? So it's like this, it has this effect where it doesn't cause body fat gain. Now, there's other people that are critical to say, well, eating too much protein kind of swings you back into this glucose, predominantly glucose metabolics metabolism as opposed to a fat metabolism. Maybe there's some differences, and maybe it's, when you're trying to put on muscle is a different requirement for protein than just sort of being at maintenance. You're 245 pounds now. What is your goal weight in the off season? What do you try to get to in a contest level?
So I believe the heaviest I've been up to is 275 pounds. I felt not very great. Any bodybuilder that says they feel great in the off season is probably lying, as if they're a big sort of size, As a pre-contest bodybuilder, I compete at something like 220 pounds, so 100 kilos.
Okay, that's still pretty good size. Yeah, I mean, so you're up, I guess, near 20 stone. I guess if I remember my calculation, I think that's 19 stone 9, if I'm not correct. But and then so when it's time for you to get leaner, how do you approach that? Do you do just a caloric reduction, say high fat, or do you gravitate towards more protein? How do you do how do you lean out?
That's actually how I came into the carnivore diet. So I noticed a lot of bodybuilders are sort of, just eating protein, like lean meat before a competition. I thought, well, if you scale that back a bit and think, all right, I need to get the protein in to be satiated. I'm trying to reduce the excess energy that's stored in my body. So all I did was actually just reduce the excess energy substrate I was providing it. So that was less fat. Wasn't no fat, but I sort of tapered it around, and I'd use a lot of the Ted Naiman protein energy ratio protocols. So I was doing that without even realizing who Ted Naiman was.
Yeah. And well, I mean, and Ted, I think, will certainly credit his research on looking at bodybuilders and physique competitors. He says, what do these guys do to get lean? Which makes sense. I mean, to me, you're like, well, who are the people that have the most muscle on the planet? Who are the people that have the least body fat? Well, it's going to be bodybuilders. Now, granted, you don't want to emulate everything they do, particularly when it comes to some of the drug usage and things like that. But I mean, from a dietary standpoint, yeah, they reduce their fat and increase their protein, and they reduce their calories in by and large. Now, traditionally, it's been very low fat, higher carb for performance, but that comes at a cost at maybe hormone production and overall feel. I mean, how many contests have you done over the years?
I've probably done about 6 to 8.
And when you do your cut, when you had done your cut with a standard bodybuilder, chicken, rice, and vegetable type of thing, compared to a carnivore, is there a difference in how you feel?
It's an immense difference. I spoke with Dr. Chafee about this a couple of weeks ago. It's like you can dig deeper within your body fat. It's almost like you can put more effort out and get results faster. What I noticed, at least when I was using a low fat sort of approach before, your testosterone tanks. You feel trash. Your skin gets dry. Your brain doesn't work. You can't think. Your cognition's awful. Your memory's bad. Like everything goes to pot, basically. Using, sort of a more higher fat approach, not including the carbohydrates, I've noticed I can sustain my workouts for a lot longer. It does seem to have a beneficial effect on my dieting longevity in a way.
And when you say a higher fat approach, but let's say your macros now, you're 70%, 65, 70% calories by fat. Now, when you get down to contest shape, where are you at that point? Do you know?
Yeah. So my last diet, I think I was around 500 grams of protein, and I want to say the lowest I got was about 150 fat. So okay. I am elevating the protein fat ratio is at least 50% protein.
Okay. So but there's still a considerable amount of fat, 150 grams of fat.
Yeah.
And so I'm just looking at the calories on that. So you're 1350 in fat and another 500, another 2000 in protein. So you're still at 3,300 calories or something like that. So it's still
around there.
Quite a bit of numbers, quite a bit of calories to be coming into a contest. I mean, when there's some people out there, even men, down below 2,000 for some of these contests, which I think is tough to sustain. Are you doing a lot of cardio, or is it just all weightlifting?
I really don't like cardio for bodybuilding purposes. I find having a steady energy expenditure useful. So I might go in for a walk with the dogs. I might cycle my bike for to and from the gym. I don't do any additional cardio though. It seems to be that the more I do, the more it cuts into my training. My training is very specific to me. Like I mentioned, I do see a benefit just from using that energy I would spend doing cardio into my weightlifting.
Yeah, it's kind of something like guys like Stan Efferding, who I've talked to, has said the same thing. He thinks you do better due to the training and less of the cardio. So, I mean, you're only, like you said, 1-ish hour a week, maybe 5 or 6 hours a week is all your training typically. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I don't spend all day every day in the gym. It is probably 6 hours if you tally up all of it.
Yeah, that's really not that much compared to a lot of other sports, and you get sort of significant benefit. Let me ask you, when you were dieting, you said you felt awful. How did that affect your mental health when you were dieting on a standard bodybuilding diet versus a carnivore diet with a higher fat? Was there a difference in your mood, your autistic sort of symptoms, things like that?
Yeah, the symptoms of autism were a lot worse. It seemed like I had like a very nervous disposition. I was very anxious about things. Things would, sort of buzz me off a lot. Like I'd get really annoyed about the most bizarre things. It was like I had a short fuse or something. Anyone knows me knows I'm not an aggressive sort of person, so it's quite bizarre to be feeling that way when you're not someone that's perceived as that kind of person.
What do you do with regard to electrolyte management? Is that something, I imagine as you get leaner and leaner, I know for me, when I get super lean, then I'm more apt to deal with cramping type situations. So do you have any strategies for dealing with fluid and electrolytes?
Yeah, so in regards to cramping, I think a lot of the issues that people are having with those is essentially a lack of taurine in a lot of cases and sodium. So taurine is in the muscle meat of animals predominantly. So people having issues with that, you can increase the sodium, increase the taurine. It's gonna help regulate your electrolyte balance, which I find very useful, especially if I'm not eating too much meat on a particular day. I'll supplement with a bit of taurine powder. Other than that, I don't seem to have any issues myself. I don't overdrink water if I drink to thirst and salt to taste.
Got it. And it's interesting. I haven't heard a discussion around taurine and cramping before. I'll have to look into that a little bit. But a lot of, as you come into those final days of getting on contest ready, a lot of bodybuilders they will carb deplete and then they will introduce carbohydrates, right before the contest. Is that something you have to do or play with or need to mess with?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I did actually carb up with my last competition. I haven't told anyone this yet, but I did have gastric distress as a result of it. My body was not tuned to taking any carbohydrates. I was stupid and it is admittedly my fault. It seems like you can almost refill glycogen and fill out sort of thing with enough fat. So that'd be evident in the fact that my training performance is just as good as it was before whilst omitting carbohydrates, but supplying enough fat.
I mean, as a bodybuilder doing a carnivore approach, you still have to be in the minority, although I see more and more. In fact, I've talked to a lot of people over the years that do this, and they often say what you say. It's the easiest cut they've ever had. They feel so much better. They have no issues with performance in gym. I'm sure you talk with other bodybuilders and stuff like that. Have any of them talked about, question what you're doing or thinking you're crazy because you're not including a bunch of carbs, or how's that gone?
No one really questions me on it. I just kind of get on with my own thing. But I'll say you can tell when you're down the gym, people might look at you and think, that guy just eats meat. Like, what's this about? I do see a lot of misinformation out there, at least about, carbs and bodybuilding. And it seems to be like the only way to get big and maintain muscle and cut fat is to have carbs in your diet. But the reality is it's not an essential nutrient. We just need protein and fats. It's so bizarre, the way I look at it anyway. Yeah,
I don't know if you saw, there was a recently study published by a guy named Menno Henselman, who is big in the body composition, bodybuilding, fitness world. And he did a review of the literature on carbohydrates. Are they necessary for either performance, strength, or muscle building? And basically the conclusion was no, they're not. I mean, they're outside of being able to get into an easier caloric excess, which is, the difficulty. So when you're, and that's what a lot of people echo to me. I was like, I just can't eat enough. And it's hard because I'm so full. How do you, when you're trying to put on muscle, you said maintenance, you're 3,500 calories or something like that. How much you got to eat to put on muscle? So let's say you wanted to put on, a couple kilos, over the next 6 months to a year, what would your strategy be for that?
It'd be a very slow incremental increase of energy intake, somewhat protein but majority fat. So I'd probably be using a lot more dairy because it is a quicker and easier way of getting fat in. You can put butter in coffees, things of that nature. And I suggest to people perhaps to have your first meal at the start of the day, very early, your last meal later at night. The only thing with that is it can affect your sleep and the whole balance and how you feel during the day. So you've got to bodybuilding ultimately isn't the most healthiest sport. So you've got to figure out for yourself, what do you want to do with your body to get to the goals you want.
You mentioned bodybuilding is not the healthiest sport. Why do you say that? What is the unhealthy aspect of it? I mean, because outside of the, if you're using lots of different drugs and things like that, then I can see where potentially that has a problem. I mean, is it just the size you have to carry, or what do you think that makes it unhealthy?
The main issue is that, generally speaking, your blood pressure will increase as a result of your body weight. So regardless of if I was 25 stone of muscle or 25 stone of fat, I would have a high blood pressure. I will need blood pressure medications in order to lower it. It's putting a necessary strain in your body where your heart's not strong enough and big enough to pump that much blood around without extreme difficulty. So that's the key thing. I think the body weight aspect is the biggest thing. There's a few other things as well I can go into if you want.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting, and certainly, there is a sort of point of normal physiology or normal body composition that humans are designed for. I don't think we're designed to support 300 pounds of solid muscle with our internal organs and our heart. You're right. It can, and a lot of people see their heart will enlarge to try to compensate for some of this, but you have to, in order to generate the blood flow to all these, increase muscle and vascular size that you're now supporting, because when you grow muscle, you grow blood vessels to support those muscles. And so you've got more and more to push through. You said there were some other things that you think are problematic. What else do you think besides the blood pressure?
It's blood pressure. If you look at what I eat in a day video by bodybuilder, pretty much anyone, take your picks, anyone you think, you'll usually see, all right, meal one, I'm going to take my green shake with my super multi natural vitamin mineral thing with some herbal extracts of this and this and this and this and all these concoctions just to manage their health because they think it's beneficial. I think part of the unhealthy aspect of bodybuilding is the point that we ultimately want to have the best performance, the best physique that we can. So by doing that, people are often willing to take unnecessary risks. So they're going to by default put more strain on their body to achieve the goals that they want. So that might be excessive performance enhancing drug use. I say excessive just because I've used them in the past, and just not monitoring health in general. So a lot of bodybuilders will say, "Oh, I have my blood tested every year." I'm like, that's not going to be enough. Your body's so dynamic, like I mentioned earlier. You're going to process things very differently from point A to point B. The damage that you're accruing in your body could be quite significant by the time your next yearly blood test rolls around. So I say to people, have a blood test as often as you can. And if you can't afford to do that, you're risking your health generally.
I can't imagine, as a bodybuilder, you're spending a lot of money on, supplements and food and all this stuff. That a blood test is not that big of an expense relative to that. What is your next contest that you're training for? Do you have one in mind?
I'm going to wait for the spine surgery first, then probably reassess and look at it that sort of point of view. I mean, it might be that I have to compete in men's physique, so I can't train my legs like I used to. I really try to, but I honestly can't. It might be that I can't train legs how I want ever again. So I might have to just readjust my goals to align what is physically possible for my body. So a men's physique would be more approachable, compatible, accessible to what I can actually do at the time.
Yeah, the men's physique is, I know they have like the classic bodybuilding, where it's not so just massive, people that are walking on stage at 280 pounds ripped. They're back to like maybe what they were in the 1970s or something like that, maybe more reasonable size. And the physique is, because you wear the shorts, right? The long shorts, you don't have to see your thighs very much. And so it's kind of more of a, I don't know, a different sort of look for sure for some people.
It's different, yeah.
Do you, outside of bodybuilding, I mean, do you have a vocation that you typically do? Do you have a job that you do as well?
So I'm a nutrition consultant. I do diet plans, consultations, things of that nature. I recently started up a YouTube channel. So I'm a content creator as well. Unfortunately, due to the nature of my spine and how manageable it is, I am in bed probably between 16 and 18 hours per day, lying flat. So I'm very limited to what I can do in terms of jobs. I don't look it, but the thing is, that is the reality that I live in. So,
well, it's certainly amazing that you can actually bodybuild and with that much pain that you're restricted to bed for a significant part of the day, and hopefully that surgery will hopefully give you some relief with that. It certainly sounds like it's tough to do. So good luck with that. As far as, so you do some nutrition consulting with some folks when you design diets. How are you using carnivore for many people, or what kind of diets are you prescribing for folks?
So it's, the way I scale it down is there's a standard American diet, which is, say, here. You'll have bodybuilder diet, which might be a little bit healthier in some regards here. What I tried to get people is closer towards the carnivore diet. I know for myself and a lot of your viewers, it does seem to be very impactful in health, good at health outcomes in general. So if I say to someone, you're eating chicken, rice, and broccoli, we'll try taking out the broccoli, reducing the rice, having white rice rather than brown rice, including butter, animal fats as your fat source. I tried to scale them back in that regard. But generally, the most successful approach, like my girlfriend is following, is the carnivore diet. So she's managed to lose 2 stone in something like 3 months already. So she's getting some really good results from it. And that's ultimately what I'd prescribe to someone if they said to me, look, Jonathan, you've got a month to help me out, sort of thing. What we're going to do, that's going to be the approach I take.
Yeah, well, 2 stone, so it's 28 pounds. It's pretty significant. I want to just go back to the comment. You said white rice instead of brown rice. What is the rationale behind that? Is it the lower fiber content, or what is the rationale for white versus brown rice?
So what we know about brown rice is it is, like you said, higher in fiber. It's also higher in arsenic. There's no safe arsenic amount for the body to be able to tolerate. Ideally, you want that value to be as close to 0. So that's one sort of impact that I might find useful.
Yeah, I mean, I guess not consuming a lot of arsenic would probably be, most people would consider good. I don't know how much is in there relative, if it's a minuscule amount, but obviously it's, in some cases, you want to avoid those types of things. When you are able to sort of implement a carnivore diet with a client, have the results been better than other diets in your experience so far?
I find it's a lot easier to coach people. So ultimately, when you're having influx of carbohydrates in your diet, high sugar, high sodium, ultra processed foods, you'll see that their scale weight will jump a lot more. I was commonly noticing maybe 2 to 3 kilos within a space of a week. And it might be that they look leaner, but they've gained some weight. And I'm like, how does that work? And it might be vice versa sort of thing. So the amount of water you hold seems to be a lot less, which is relative to the amount of inflammation that your body's being put through. So that seems to be one of the most basic, obvious things. Other than that, everyone I notice on a carnivore diet is having much improved digestive health. Their hunger signaling is much more appropriate, so they can eat a meal and know when they're full. They're not having to think, oh, I need to bulk up my meal with a large salad or some kale or spinach or lettuce or whatever it is people have nowadays, and think, okay, I have to have a big meal. They can eat a smaller amount but still feel the same nutrient satisfaction that they should appropriately have.
In the UK, I mean, well, I guess I saw there was maybe and I forgive me, I'm not a big football follower, or we would call it soccer here, but I guess there was a guy that came out announcing he was on sort of a carnivore-ish diet. He's from Norway, and I can't remember his name, but I don't know if you're familiar, but he just announced that he was, they were sort of questioning his diet, where he was including a bunch of red meat and liver and heart and stuff like that. And he's one of the best players in soccer right now. He's like the most prolific goal scorer. Are you seeing, I mean, and just to the counter of that, I'm seeing a lot of stuff in the UK about sort of vegan activists protesting, pouring milk out in Sotheby's and other stores, and punching holes in dairy trucks and stuff like that, and pouring feces into the milk, the truck's milk container, so they have to throw it away. what is a normal person, and I'm not saying any of us is normal, but what does the average person think about that in the UK? Are they think these people are crazy, or are they kind of saying, yeah, maybe these guys are right. Maybe we should give up meat?
I think a lot of people will accept that, desecrating a statue, a important area, popular place, it's horrible. People don't like it. People do, however, seem to resonate with the fact that we should be more sustainable and that sort of thing. That's a whole topic for a different video, but it's people are trying to be healthy. People are trying to make the right decisions, but we've seen that based on the health guidelines, people are following them, but we're not getting healthier as a general population. So that seems to be very, very common across the board, even in other Western countries, so like the US, Canada. We're following the diet that they're prescribing, but it's just not working out.
Yeah, as I said, I just recently returned from the UK, and I noticed that even though you're seeing an increase in obesity and disease there, which I'm sure you are, it's not even near the scale that we have in the US yet. I think, give it another 10, 20 years and you'll probably catch up, unfortunately. Hopefully not. Maybe people will snap out of it in time to avoid that disaster that we have here in this country, where we have such a high obesity rate. Something like 42% of our population is literally clinically obese at this point, which is quite a shame. I know bodybuilding is your sort of passion right now, as long as you can do it, depending on the outcome of the surgery and stuff. Do you ever get any feedback from other people that might be on the autism spectrum disorder with diet impacting them? Do you ever interact with those folks?
I'm someone that is very empathetic towards other people's health. I've seen a lot of bad health in my short 27-year lifespan. I used to volunteer at a palliative care ward, and just touching on the autism and things of that nature, then I'd say, yeah, people are seem to be benefiting from emitting the plants, increasing the fat. The omega-3 content in particular seems to be most useful, at least in what I'm seeing. I mean, you don't have to be chugging down like liters of, fish oils and things, but, just having a healthy serving of fish every day or every few days seems to be of quite a lot of importance.
Yeah, there's a online group called the Autistic Carnivores. I think Tom Clark is
Thomas Clark. Yeah,
Tom and he occasionally texts me with updates and stuff like this. I'm glad to see that he has been doing that, and I'm aware that a lot of people with autism have noticed at least some benefit, in their just overall health, and in some cases their ability to function by switching to a carnivore diet. So I think there's definitely something going on there. I don't know what it is for sure, but clearly something is going on that's helping that. So any friends, family, you said you have a girlfriend, parents, anybody, I don't know if you have siblings that have been like saying, why are you eating this all meat diet? Or are you crazy? Are they concerned about what's going on with you?
What I'm getting is there's a lot of silent bystanders. So they'll observe me and they'll see, is this just a thing that he's doing for a bit, or is it a long-term thing? I actually had a question from my brother recently, which was, what's the difference between the ketogenic and carnivore diet? So I made a video outlining exactly that. It seems to be very different, at least in my experience. It's hard to say, but when you have a relatively fairly decent sort of physique without sounding arrogant or cocky or anything, people will look at you and think, this guy might know something. He might be on something here, especially as I've maintained it. It's not like I've started the diet, then I've lost my body. I've not got fat. I've not lost my muscle, so forth. So that seems to be the common thing. Like a lot of people just silent bystanders sort of thing.
Yeah. Let me ask you just as far, and I know, granted, you said you're 7 out of 10 pain most of the day, and, you're unable to do a lot of things because of that. Has your overall mood improved since going on a carnivore? Are you more happier, or what do you think with that?
Yeah, so my mood is a lot more balanced. It's very hard to explain, but if something was relatively bad to happen, say I tripped and slipped and fell over or something stupid, I might think, oh, that was really bad and that really, hurt, and be swearing and all sorts of things. But now it's a bit more like I can take things with a pinch of salt more. So I'd say my mood is much more stable, more balanced. I'm not having the bad thoughts I used to have, and that seems to be quite impactful.
A lot of people will criticize, because I'll put up my food, like for instance, I took a picture of what I'm going to eat today, and it's a ribeye steak and a New York strip and 6 eggs. It's about 3,000 calories. And people say, oh my God, that's so expensive. No one else can eat this. I mean, and in the UK, I think meat, depending on what type, maybe lamb is definitely cheaper there than it is here. But is this an unaffordable diet for someone like you because you're eating a lot of calories more than the average person would eat. What does the cost seem to be like for what you're doing?
So I've figured this out. So I did a degree in nutrition, and I've looked at low-income families and dietary intakes, all sorts of things across the board. It seems that the average person, like the average maybe 108-pound man, can subsist on a diet which costs roughly £30 a week. That is carnivore. So that would be something like $40, I don't know.
In the UK?
And that's in the UK, yeah, that's right.
And you said 100. So, you said 108 pound, but I'm sure that was 180 perhaps or something.
30 pounds.
Oh, 30 pounds. But how much does a man weigh?
180.
180. Okay, I thought you said 108 pounds. I said that's a pretty skinny guy. But so 180 pound man can eat a carnivore diet for 30 pounds a week.
Yeah,
that's not that much money. How would they do that? What would they have to eat? Eggs and mince or something like that?
Yeah, you're looking at even if you to get the bare basics, barn eggs with 20% fat plus beef mince, you're going to do it. You're going to cover it easily. It's not going to be a big deal, and you're going to be able to afford salt, seasonings, condiments, whatever you guys like to use. So it's extremely doable.
Yeah, and how many any idea how many calories that would be that you would be able to get?
Around 2,500.
So 2,500 calories a day for 30 pounds a week. Yeah, I would suggest that that's probably for most people doable, at least in the UK, I would guess. Well, goodness, we are just about out of time, guys. This has gone by. Jonathan, let me give you an opportunity to share your social media if you want to. I know you said you do coaching or nutrition consulting. Let people know where they could find you for that if you don't mind.
Sure. So I'm very accessible through Instagram for quick questions. So that is composition_consultant. My website is compositionconsultant.com. I offer consultations, dietary plans, dietary analysis, any sort of service you require in regards to your diet and health, I can provide. That is very affordable. I just want to point that out. It is around 3 times less than all of my competitors. My third thing is the YouTube, which is composition_consultant.
Okay. Well, perfect. So composition_consultant across all these different platforms. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much. Good luck on the upcoming surgery. I hope it's successful and works for you and gets you back into whatever you want to do. And if there's anything we can do, let us know. And thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for your time. I'm really glad to speak to you. Cheers.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye, everybody. We'll see you guys tomorrow.